Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary. Thank you for your comments. We will begin rounds of 5-minute questions. I'll begin. I have first a personnel question for you. Jeff Resmovich was nominated to be the Chief Financial Officer of DHS last year. His nomination has been pending for some time before the Senate. Of course, his nomination is especially important to the Appropriations Committee. It doesn't make a lot of sense to have an agency this large without a CFO for this long. I assume you would agree with me that his confirmation, the ability to get a CFO working with you at the department is of the utmost importance.
It most certainly is, Mr. Chair. I have worked very closely with Jeff Resmovich for about 7 years now, previously when I was a Deputy Secretary, and let me say unequivocally that he is pure gold as a public servant. I should also note that the woman over my left shoulder, Ann Tipton, who is serving as our Chief Financial Officer, is also pure gold. We need a Senate-confirmed CFO for the stabilization that it provides our department.
You heard me testify to the amount of resources that would have been allocated in the emergency supplemental that included $20 billion to surge to 50,000 detention beds, to hire over 4,000 new asylum officers to attack the backlog, 1,500 new Border Patrol agents and officers. Can you talk for a moment about what those kind of resources would have allowed you to do had both Republicans and Democrats come together and supported that bipartisan supplemental package?
Chair Murphy, my first encounter with the immigration system, the broken immigration system, was in the 1990s when I served as a federal prosecutor in California. And I learned then that the system was fundamentally broken, and it remains so. This piece of bipartisan legislation would have been the most transformative change to our broken immigration system, not only for the resources it provided, but for the changes in the law that it delivered. It would have brought such extraordinary fairness and speed to a system that has suffered backlogs and interminable timelines in the processing of claims. It would have plussed up our personnel in an unprecedented fashion, as you have commented. It would have allowed us to adjudicate asylum claims that now take more than 7 years to run through the courts in sometimes less than 90 days. Absolutely transformative, not only from an efficiency perspective, but also fundamentally from a security perspective.
Let me ask you specifically about how you achieve an increased deterrence. I think there's a perception here that by just loading up on detention beds, you can have an appreciable impact on deterrence. But what the bipartisan bill tried to do, at your and others' urging, was to provide more immediate certainty on asylum claims, to adjudicate those claims in a handful of days or weeks instead of what happens today, 5 years or 10 years. Now, that's just the right thing to do for the country. It's just fair to have that outcome at the border rather than 10 years later. But tell us a little bit about the elements of this bill, including that element, that would have had an impact on deterrent, that would have stopped people from ever contemplating the journey to the border, and how that can only be achieved by changes in law, not just changes in funding levels.
Absolutely, Mr. Chair. So fundamentally, the risk calculus of intending migrants would have changed dramatically, because right now what they see is a broken asylum system, and they understand that when they are encountered at the border and make a claim for asylum, their claim is ultimately adjudicated, sometimes in more than 7 years. Our backlog is immense, and it's been growing year over year for well more than a decade. And what happens is, in those 7 years, they work. Sometimes they have United States citizen children, and they gain a sense of footing in the United States before their claim to stay here has even been adjudicated. Under the bipartisan legislation, that multi-year process would have been transformed to as little as 90 days and sometimes even quicker. And given the denial rate for most asylum claims an intending migrant would have the calculus of deciding, should I take that dangerous journey? Should I place my life savings in the hands of smugglers only to be turned around upon arrival in the United States within 90 days? An absolute game changer.
Finally, let me ask you about a topic that we've spent a lot of time talking about relative to the fentanyl trade. The fentanyl trade between the United States and Mexico is a circle. Fentanyl comes into the United States, money and guns leaves the United States. That is why, on a bipartisan basis, we have provided additional money for outbound inspections so that we are catching, not all, but an appreciable amount of guns and money as it leaves the United States. This trade can only work if the guns and the money leaves and the fentanyl comes back. What percentage of traffic today is subject to outbound inspection, and what's a realistic projection for how we're going to expand outbound inspections in this fiscal year?
Chair Murphy, I'll have to get the precise numbers to you subsequent to this hearing, but let me say that CBP, U.S. Customs and Border Protection, and Homeland Security Investigations, the investigative arm of Immigration and Customs Enforcement, are working in tandem to address the outbound flow of both money and guns. In fact, Operation Without a Trace, I will provide the data to you, has been an extraordinarily effective operation to curtail the movement of guns and money. We also have deployed transnational criminal investigative units to Mexico to work with our law enforcement partners in Mexico to address this issue. And we are, of course, very well and closely aligned with our United States Department of Justice.
Great. We'll look forward to that update. Senator Britt.
Thank you, Chair Murphy.